I'm ready. Good
Good
morning. Good
morning, good
morning.
morning.
I
I
don't
don't
see
see
my.
my.
There we
There we
go.
go.
Hey, good
Hey, good
morning,
morning,
everyone.
everyone.
I'm
I'm
Claire
Claire
Silver.
Silver.
I
I
am an
am an
anonymous
anonymous
artist,
artist,
which
which
is
is
why
why
I
I
am
am
not
not
on
on
stage
stage
with
with
you
you
there
there
now.
now.
But I'm
But I'm
excited to
excited to
do
do
this
this
presentation
presentation
on
on
AI
AI
prompting
prompting
for
for
artists
artists
with
with
you.
you.
And I
And
will
I will
just
just
be
be
saying when
saying
to
when to
click
click
through the
through the
presentation.
presentation.
So
So
don't
don't
mind
mind
me
me
saying
saying
click.
click.
And I'm
And I'm
excited to
excited
get
to get
started.
started.
AI
AI
has a
has a
lot of
lot of
applications for
applications for
artists that
artists
you
that you
may
may
not
not
think
think
of
of
right
right
away.
away.
And
And
so I
so I
hope
hope
to
to
explore
explore
some of
some of
those
those
with
with
you
you
today
today
and
and
maybe
maybe
get some
get
of
some
you
of
a
you a
little
little
excited
excited
about it.
about it.
So
So
this
this
presentation is
presentation
going
is
to
going to
focus
focus
on
on
finding
finding
your
your
signature
signature
with
with
text to
text to
image
image
art.
art.
We
We
hear a
hear a
lot
lot
about
about
how
how
AI
AI
all
all
sort of
sort of
looks the
looks the
same.
same.
And I
And I
hope
hope
to
to
use
use
this
this
to
to
help you to
help you to
find
find
something
something
different
different
that you
that
may
you may
resonate
resonate
with.
with.
So you
So
can
you
go
can go
ahead and
ahead and
click.
click.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To
To
the
the
next
next
slide.
slide.
There we
There
go.
we go.
Okay, so
Okay, so
just
just
a
a
quick
quick
about
about
me.
me.
Again, my
Again, my
name is
name is
Claire
Claire
Silver.
Silver.
I'm an
I'm an
anonymous
anonymous
AI
AI
collaborative
collaborative
artist,
artist,
a
a
CryptoPunk
CryptoPunk
since
since
Claim,
Claim,
early
early
CryptoPunk.
CryptoPunk.
I've been
I've been
using
using
AI
AI
since
since
2018,
2018,
which
which
was
was pre
pre-text to
text to
image. So
image.
that
So that
was
was
before
before
you
you
could
could
type
type
words
words
to
to
work with
work
the
with the
AI.
AI.
Started with a
Started with a
program
program
called
called
ArtBreeder,
ArtBreeder,
then
then
called
called
GanBreeder,
GanBreeder,
which
which
was
was
purely
purely
curatorial.
curatorial.
You
You
chose
chose
based
based
on
on
visual
visual
looks
looks
and would
and would
sort
sort
of
of
mix
mix
them
them
together
together
into new
into new
looks,
looks,
um, which really
which really
helped me
helped me
train my
train my
taste. I
taste. I
think
think
taste is
taste is
a
a
big
big
part
part
of
of
working with
working with
AI and
AI and
finding your
finding your
style.
style.
So
So
I'm
I'm
grateful for
grateful for
that
that
background.
background.
I'm
I'm
now
now
part
part
of
of
the
the
LACMA
LACMA
permanent
permanent
collection,
collection,
thanks
thanks
to
to
Cosimo de
Cosimo de
Medici,
Medici,
who
who
donated
donated
some
some
incredible
incredible
works.
works.
And I
And I
have
have
sold
sold
with
with
Sotheby's
Sotheby's
Contemporary
Contemporary
Day
Day
auction.
auction.
So
So
I'm
I'm
very
very
honored
honored
to
to
have
have
AI
AI
work
work
in
in
these
these
kinds of
kinds of
institutions
institutions
that are
that are
part of
part
our
of our
cultural
cultural
lineage,
lineage,
because I
because I
know that
know that
AI
AI
is
is
a
a
huge
huge
part of
part
our
of our
future.
future.
So I'm
So I'm
happy to
happy
be
to be
involved.
involved.
I've got my
Got my
contacts on
contacts
the
on the
side
side
there if
there if
anyone's
anyone's
interested in
interested in
learning
learning
more.
more.
I
I
live
live
on
on
Twitter,
Twitter,
so I
so I
have
have
tutorials
tutorials
for
for
AI
AI
there as
there as
well that
well
go
that go
more
more
in
in
depth
depth
if you'd
if
like
you'd
to
like to
try
try
yourself.
yourself.
So I
So
guess
I
we
guess
can
we
go
can go
ahead and
ahead and
start.
start.
So you
So
could
you could
hit
hit
next
next
slide if
slide
you're
if you're
ready.
ready.
So
So
before I
before
get
I get
into
into
sort of
sort of
how we
how we
do
do
this,
this,
I
I
feel like
feel
I
like I
need to
need to
cover a
cover a
misconception
misconception
that a
that a
lot of
lot of
people
people
have
have
about
about
AI.
AI.
Maybe
Maybe
you've
you've
heard of
heard
it,
of it,
maybe you
maybe you
haven't.
haven't.
But
But
the
the
chief
chief
complaint that
complaint
I
that I
hear
hear
about
about
AI
AI
is that
is
it
that it
steals
steals
from
from
other
other
artists.
artists.
And this
And
is
this is
mostly
mostly
based
based
upon the
upon the
misunderstanding
misunderstanding
that
that
it
it
takes
takes
pieces
pieces
of
of
other
other
artists'
artists'
work
work
and
and
sort
sort
of
of
smashes them
smashes them
together
together
or
or
collages
collages
them
them
or
or
photobashes
photobashes
them,
them,
copies
copies
them
them
into a
into a
piece.
piece.
That's a
That's a
misunderstanding
misunderstanding
of
of
how it
how it
works. How
works.
it
How it
works
works
is that
is
it
that it
learns
learns
traits
traits
about
about
a
a
particular
particular
artist or
artist or
style or
style or
medium,
medium,
and it
and it
takes those
takes those
things that
things
it's
that it's
learned
learned
and it
and it
combines them
combines them
into
into
something
something
entirely
entirely
new.
new.
Uh,
Uh,
in that
in
way,
that
it
way, it
works
works
very
very
much like
much
our
like our
brains
brains
do.
do.
We
We
take
take
influences
influences
from the
from the
world
world
around
around
us,
us,
things that
things
we
that we
love,
love,
and we
and we
learn from
learn from
them,
them,
and we
and we
combine
combine
them,
them,
and
and
we
we
create
create
new
new
work
work
from
from
them.
them.
So, for
So, for
example,
example,
if you
if you
were
were
to
to
ask
ask
AI
AI
to
to
create a
create a
painting
painting
in the
in the
style
style
of
of
Sargent,
Sargent,
it
it
doesn't
doesn't
look at
look at
paintings of
paintings of
Sargent
Sargent
and
and
take
take
pieces
pieces
of them
of them
and
and
collage them
collage them
together to
together to
give
give
you
you
a
a
piece.
piece.
It
It
learns
learns
that
that
Sargent
Sargent
often paints figures, that figures have two hands, that hands have five fingers, and fingers are cylinders and bend at a joint, and that Sargent often paints them with this sort of brushstroke or that sort of lighting, and it takes all of those things that it's learned and it creates something new in the style of, what it's learned. So maybe that's a fine line for some people. For me, it makes things pretty clear. Um, but it's important to cover it before we go into the next piece of this. And I will say, for this presentation on how to prompt, how to type text to get AI imagery, I've not used any artist names, whether or not they are public domain or CCO. I still haven't used them, just to show that it's possible to not do so if this is a moral issue for you, and still work with AI. So I've made the choice to do it that way. So we can go into the next slide. If you will click, there we go. Okay, great. So the first step in finding kind of an aesthetic that you might be interested in creating work with, note I don't say the aesthetic because AI gives you so many opportunities to create so many different looks that it's not going to be the only aesthetic you have. It's not the same as perhaps being able to point at a painting and say, that's a Warhol, or that's a Klimt. There's a world of different aesthetics that you can choose from. So for choosing an aesthetic, the first step is to ask, what do I like? So you can click the next slide here. Yep. So here are some things that I like, not all the things that I like, of course. I like Whistler and Sargent and Rothko. I like the fluid paintings that you would see on Instagram a few years ago, where you pour them in a cup. I like post-internet art, very strange, interesting looks as a millennial, love them. David Fincher, he's a filmmaker. Stanley Kubrick, I love his work as well. I love paper cutting and origami, Japanese kawaii aesthetics, again, millennial, can't help myself. Liminal spaces, Trent Reznor, who's a musician, industrial music. Video games, Catcher in the Rye, and mixed media work. So we can click the next slide now. So what I did was, after making a list of those things, and as you can tell, they are varied, they're not just visual aesthetics, I broke them down into what I like about each of them. If I had to simplify, there are lots of things, but what I like about each of them simplistically. And from those different traits that I like about these things, you can click the next slide here, I found patterns, right? So lighting is repeated in different ways, particular types of lighting, perhaps, kind of that glowy atmospheric lighting, which atmosphere is also a pattern. Nostalgia is something that comes up a few times. And color, in particular, you see Rothko and the kawaii aesthetics, which are very different. However, Rothko has that deep color field theory, depth, and glow, and the kawaii aesthetics are more of a pop color, so it's very clean, bright, and so those are patterns that come up regularly. So from those things, you can do the next slide here. You can click. There we go. From those things, the patterns that emerge are color, atmosphere, lighting, storytelling, millennial nostalgia, avant aesthetics. Uh, Most of them have figures, but abstracted figures. So we've got figurative abstraction, texture, layers, depth, and mixed media. That's kind of my baseline for what I should try and mix into an aesthetic with AI using words to create a visual that I would like and I would resonate with. So we've got the sparkles because it's the magic words here. This is not the prompt we will use, but it's the basis for writing it. All right, we can click on to the next one. So now that I have that, it's time to do some research. So the more art history you know, and the more that you know about the technical side of your medium that you're liking to dig into, the more you'll be able to write a prompt that reflects that. So I start with Wikipedia, and I've searched for digital art, post-internet art on Wikipedia. So on the left, there's that little snippet there of some different rabbit holes that Wikipedia recommends. So we see cyberculture. That could be a great word to add to a prompt. Ashy art, another great word to add to a prompt for that aesthetic, etc. You can click again. This is the Aesthetics Wiki, which is another great website I recommend for internet subcultures, other subcultures as well, but I'm again using it for sort of this post-internet look for this particular presentation. So here's a whole list of different looks and aesthetics that come from the internet. Any of these words can be used in a prompt to be able to kind of tease that aesthetic into it some more. So we're still researching here. We can click again. ArtV is the name of a website where you can search for public domain traditional work or non-public domain modern work. I'm using the public domain traditional work here. So you just browse it. It's got a wide variety, and you can find, for example, movements like luminism, tonalism, things that perhaps some people are not familiar with, that when you see the image, you love the look, but you don't know the medium or the movement or the time period, and you can sort of take those things and put them into your prompt. So for example, I could say something like, from Wikipedia here on the left, digital art, comma, cyber pop from Aesthetics Wiki on the right, comma, tonalism from ArtV on the bottom, comma, and then click again. And so, yeah, we start writing them all down, the ones that we like, in a little notepad file. You should always keep this. Think of this as your spell book, where you can use different terms to combine into a summoning spell in AI to create your images. So it's just about mixing influences into something entirely new. All right, we can move on to the next slide. Click. So when it comes to actually prompting, this is the prompt that I'm using here. This is not a prompt that I would normally use. This is not my aesthetic normally. However, for the purposes of this, I've put this together. So from these different websites that I've shown you, I've taken these terms. We've got the kawaii in there. We've got webcore, which is that internet look. Cinematic storytelling, which I feel is very Stanley Kubrick, very David Fincher. We've got some fluid painting, which I like. Tonalism, volumetric lighting, and mixed media. So we've got Figma collage, paper cutting, luminism, 3D render. We're mixing so many different disparate concepts that you can't really do. And so let's click again. That's all what we would like in the prompt. Now, negative prompting, this is what you add to the end to have the opposite. This is what you don't want. I don't want my piece to look cartoonish or to be an animation. I have 3D in both sides. Sometimes that works pretty well. It kind of balances out. Sometimes it doesn't. Here it does. I'm having to rush here. I'm realizing we're coming up against it. So let's move on and it'll show the whole prompt. Click, please. Next slide. Yep. So the whole prompt together here, huge thing. This is what we want plus what we don't want. This is the prompt that we will put into our AI, which will be Stable Diffusion today. Dream Studio is the name of it. We can click again. So this is the website, beta.dreamstudio.ai, and at the bottom you can see where you can put in your prompt. There are sliders on the right for you to adjust things to your liking. So we can click again. And when I do that, it brings these sort of abstract looks in, which I like, but I think I would like them a little more three-dimensional and maybe a little more abstracted. So I'm going to adjust some sliders, adjust a couple of words, and click again. Next slide, yep. And so this is more of the look that I'm looking for here. Interesting, different kind of look. All right, let's click again. Next slide. So these are sort of the two that I liked the most in the end from this prompt. I thought they were quite different and I really enjoyed them. And because we're coming right up against it, let's click again. I've used a different prompt now for photorealism. And so this is pure text to image. This is not me doing any editing or uploading my own work. This is just this prompt below. If you use this, you'll get a similar result. Click again. This is adding surrealism to that photorealistic prompt with text. Click again. Experimental photography. Click again. And flowers and film grain, plus a couple of volumetric lighting adjustments in the text. So you can see you can get kind of the same feeling, but different aesthetics. Right, click again. So now in painting, very quickly, this is where you can mask certain sections of the piece to combine two of them together, as you see I've done with the two prompts that we have. And if you click again, you'll see the results when running it through the AI. So you can really combine some different looks. I've only got a couple more slides. We'll go very quickly. Click again. These are some different results within painting with the same prompts. So you can get quite a variety depending on what you're favoring, 3D versus volumetric versus 2D kawaii kind of animations. Click again. And lastly, two slides here. Animation, there's one called Deforum that will do the same thing, but with frame by frame images. So you can see that you can create film this way as well. And click once more. There's also EB Synth. So this on the left is one that I've created with this. It's just a different way of doing animation. It's much smoother, still using AI to transform. And you can click the one on the right as well. The film on the right, yep. So you can see the smoothness that you can get with this technology as well. So there's a lot more that I could talk about, but I didn't realize I'd already hit my limit. I'm sorry about that. And I think if you click one more time, it is the final slide. Yep. So again, my Twitter is ClaireSilver12. I have tutorials there if you'd like to try any of this. And I don't know that we have time for questions. I think I have 4 minutes if they, but I can also. Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate you listening to my talk today.